In this video, what I'm going to be talking about is free will, basically that whole argument between free will or determinism. And when you come to terms with this, when you can kind of grasp why free will versus determinism, why it's actually a nonsensical argument that there's actually not one or the other, and why these things are important, it's going to help you to make decisions. It's going to help you to be a lot more stoic and to be the kind of man that is able to objectively look at things and see what you should do in any given situation, which is one of the most valuable skills that you can have in life. I'm John from BulldogMindset.com. You are in the right place, where I will teach you how to develop the skills you need to learn today in modern society to become the kind of man that you're capable of becoming. Click that subscribe button, become a Bulldog, and join us on our quest here. Also, make sure you click the little bell for the notifications. What we're going to be looking at today is an email I got from Angad, and he says, "Hi John, firstly, thank you for all you have done guiding tens of thousands of men like me through YouTube." Well, you're welcome. I, much like you, am a libertarian. I strongly believe that a lot of people claiming the system is against them because of race, sex, etc. are just pussies that are not putting in the hours. The mentality has gained me a lot in life. I am from India, and though having this bulldog mindset, I was able to get a high-paying software engineering job in Germany, and I'm currently working to create my own business. This is awesome. Good job, man. But I'm struggling with the question of free will. As a non-religious person, I do not believe in a soul. This leads me to believe that human beings are just machines that take decisions based on all the inputs they have received throughout their lives, including genetics, at times by a random factor to take quantum randomness and thermodynamics entropy into account. A great video that explains my point of view is this one, and I've watched the video, by the way. This shouldn't be a problem, but I find that internalizing this belief is making me less productive. I would really like to feel free will to be true, even if I have to believe in a religion for that, but I can't simply brainwash myself into believing something, so I'm really struggling. I would love to hear your opinions about this topic. Keep doing what you're doing, man. Okay, so I watched the video. This is a video with Sam Harris. Sam Harris is a pretty brilliant guy. Joe Rogan is as well, and this is a Joe Rogan clip here. And I'm not going to go through the whole video just because it's 14 minutes, but Sam Harris makes some really compelling arguments here. Okay, what he basically says is that we are all essentially automatons. Okay, that we are a complete product of, we didn't create ourselves. Okay, we're a complete product of our environment, of basically variables in an equation. What has happened to us, we're open systems, so what has happened to us and our genetics and the combination of the machinery that we are born with basically determines what we do, and it is all basically not pre-orchestrated by some divine being, but it is all just a series of effects from an original cause that have caused that, and you can't control what words are going to come out of your mouth any more than I can, nor can you control the actions that you do, because they are basically not within your choice, because they are just effects from the thought processes that are happening in your brain, which are caused by the environment, your natural conditioning and genetics, and all kinds of factors that are not directly in your control. For the most part, this is true, okay? And but there's a paradox here. This is the interesting thing. His conclusions, I believe, are the correct ones, right? And you'll find that there are so many contradictions and paradoxes in life. But his conclusions are basically this, is that when people understand this more, they will be more empathetic towards other human beings, because they'll realize that that serial killer was once a 4-year-old who was an unlucky 4-year-old, because that 4-year-old was destined to become that serial killer, and that 4-year-old didn't have any way of not becoming that. That was what happened to him, the circumstances, the environment, the random things that happened, and the thought processes that got triggered in his brain that caused him to go down that path. And you could have been that 4-year-old. You could have been that serial killer. And so we would take more of an empathetic viewpoint towards people, and more of a pragmatic and practical viewpoint in correcting behavior, right? So if someone is a criminal, do we punish them because they deserve the punishment? No, because there's no animosity, there's no harm. We don't feel anger or vengeance towards them because they're just doing what they had to do. They didn't have a choice in it. They're to some degree unlucky in the sense that the universe and the way that cause and effect happened, they happened to become that killer. Okay. So we punish them because it sets an example, because it deters behavior, because other people are less likely to do something when they know that there's a punishment, and that person in the future is less likely to do something if they've been punished. But it's just an input into that system. Just the idea of correcting criminal behavior or wrong behavior, the idea that what we need to do is change the input into the system and not be worried or upset about what the person did or didn't do, or evil, or how horrible a person they are, and try to be punitive and punish them to hurt them because they've hurt someone else, to get back, to get revenge, right? So from that viewpoint, okay, these are all really good things, because that is the Stoic outlook on life, the perspective. Okay, now we're going to look at this in isolation, but then we're going to come back, okay, and we're going to visit what I think is more true to reality, where both of these ideas merge. But I want to start with this one because this is the Stoic philosophy. When you can be objective in this way, and you can look at people as if you should view everyone in this world, okay, as if they have no control over any of their actions, as if they are automatons. I've told you guys this in many videos, in fact, all right, that they're just going to do what they're going to do, okay, that they're not doing anything out of malice, okay, that they're not evil, that none of these things, that it's just what they do, right? Again, when we talk about some of the MGTOW and the red pill type of stuff, right, and guys complain about hypergamy, or they complain about how women behave and act and how they choose, and all of these behaviors that a lot of angry MGTOW guys get upset about, okay? The reason why I take a rational and cool approach to it and it doesn't bother me is because that's how I just view it, as this is just the program that's running, and they're just running the program. It's not their faults. Like, I'm not going to get angry at people and upset at people for the actions that they're taking when they don't have control over those actions. Okay, when that's just how the program's running, like, it's no one's fault. There's no one to blame. Like, so that's the viewpoint that I take. Now, the benefit of taking that viewpoint, there's multiple benefits of it. One of them is, well, the greatest benefit. We'll start with the greatest benefit, which is greatest control and power. Okay, if you want to actually, and this is the ironic thing about this, if you want to exercise your, quote, free will, if you want to exercise your will upon the world, it requires power. And power is really your ability to manifest your will upon the world, okay? It's also what I would call freedom. I've defined freedom in that way. If you can objectively see things, okay, and you look at people as NPCs, right, as automatons, as an equation, as not evil and not malice, not malicious, okay, and you don't seek revenge, and you get angry at people because you don't have expectations on them, because they're just going to run their program. If you think of it that way, then you will not be emotionally affected, and you will be in a position where you can now modify the system. Okay? This person is behaving this way. It's not the way that you'd prefer them to behave towards you. It's not beneficial to you. It's detrimental to you. What can you put into the system? How can you change this equation? What is the input that you can give them that will give you the output that you desire to have? When you're clouded by emotion, when you are disturbed by thoughts of vengeance and revenge, okay? When you feel hurt and like you've been mistreated, and you feel like you've been stabbed in the back or betrayed, okay? It clouds the judgment. Anger, it clouds the judgment. You cannot be objective, right? You see, you're ascribing malice and things like that, and you're adopting the victim mindset, because in order to be victimized, there must be a victimizer, okay? And just like, and one thing that Sam Harris had said in that video is he talked about the idea that, like, we don't get angry at a hurricane, okay? And we don't try to kill a hurricane, but the Al-Qaeda, we try to kill them. We try to get revenge on them. We try to, he gave a good example of this elephant. Actually, I think it was in Honolulu. He said it might have been Baltimore or something, but maybe it happened somewhere there too, where it went on a rampage, like it was a abused, like, zoo elephant or something, like trained or a circus elephant or something, and it got loose and it just like stomped people. It like, it killed like 6 people or something, and the people in the town were angry and they wanted to lynch the elephant. And he was talking about how stupid that is, right? Like it's just such a weird thing that like now you're going to ascribe like human characteristics and human evil or whatever to this elephant. What would the elephant do? The elephant like doesn't have any control. It didn't do a bad thing. It didn't know what it was doing. It was just scared, and it was just natural behavior. As a cause and effect type of thing. So we take away sort of the free will in that case from the elephant, yet we apply it to humans. Don't misunderstand me. I do believe in free will, okay? But what I'm telling you is you should act as if other people do not have free will, okay? Many of the things that I tell you on this channel, many of the things that will be very valuable to you in life will be contradictions in themselves, meaning that there's a sort of a formula here. You should apply this formula to other people, but apply a different formula to yourself. This is the best way to behave, right? So I'll give you one more example just so you can understand what I'm talking about, and then we'll go back to the main point, which is this: criticism. You should never give criticism to people. You should assume that people will not take criticism correctly, that it will only be detrimental, okay? But you should be the person who takes as much criticism as you can and doesn't take it in a detrimental way, appreciates criticism and welcomes it. You should never expect that from anyone else, but you should always expect that for yourself, right? There's a lot of these sort of contradictions, and this is one of them, right? So what I'm saying here, if you can read between the lines, is that you should act as if you have free will, but you should act as if other people do not have free will. That is the quintessential, the beneficial intersection of these ideologies, because neither one of them is completely true. These are all approximations. These are all models. Everything that we do in life, philosophies, even science, it's all based on models. Models are approximations of the truth. We can't know the underlying deeper truth in a situation, right? It's more complex, right? Just consider, right, if we go down to the quantum level for a second, what kind of crazy shit happens at the quantum level? How is it even possible that something can be a wave and a particle at the same time, but when we measure it or we look at it, it changes, and that something could be within a field of probability, but only by observing it, okay, that it actually solidifies into an exact thing, an exact spot, okay? That is beyond comprehension. We don't understand really how particle physics works, right, or how quantum physics works. We don't really understand it. I mean, all of our observations tell us that when we look at a thing, it changes by the act of observation. Do you know how fucking insane that idea is? I just want you to like let that sink in. The act of observing something. That means there's some spooky shit going on, okay? That means that like somehow we're inside a simulation, we're inside some kind of a program, or there's some kind of mental connection or some kind of mystical force that we cannot detect that actually influences that thing, right? It defeats cause and effect, okay? There's actually Carl Jung wrote a really good book. Actually, he came up with a concept. It's called singularity. Singularity is this concept that there are effects without causes. Okay, this is what a lot of people call coincidences. It's one of my favorite words is serendipity, and I attribute it to be that, which is that I know that in my life there have been plenty of instances where there has been what some people would call a coincidence, but I know that it happened for a reason. I believe everything in the world, in the universe, happens for a reason. I don't know the reason, but there's too many of these instances over time for it to be purely coincidence, okay? And again, you don't have to believe me about that, but regardless if you do, the idea, again, this practical, pragmatic idea that you should treat other people as if they have no free will, but you should act as if you have free will is essential. If you can develop that trait and that attribute, it's like everyone else is frozen in time. Okay, have you ever seen one of those movies? And you have that little stopwatch that freezes everyone else in time, and you can go and do whatever you want, okay? And then you can unstop the time, right? That's the power that you gain when you do that, because you're able to avoid all of the pitfalls, right? The Stoic philosophy is based on this idea. You're avoiding all the pitfalls of human frailty and human emotion that causes you to act in a way that is not beneficial to you. There's a huge value to human emotion. There's a huge value to the whole point of life is what we experience. And if we viewed ourselves as not having free will and being automatons, we would take all of the joy and emotion out of our own lives, right? It's the ability that for us to feel these emotions, to be alive, to sense the things, but to act differently than those emotions compel us to act. That is really what Stoicism is about. That's really our call as men to become, is to become that kind of man that can view a situation, that can have empathy, that can feel deeply, okay, that can have the motivation and the drive to give his gifts to the world, to do great things, but to not let any of those emotions, whether they're good or bad, cloud his rational judgment of situations. Okay, that's where we want to go. When we talk about the question of whether or not there's free will, I think the answer to that is very simple, because you can choose to do what you want to do, right? And you have to ask yourself, where does that come from? Do random thoughts pop into your head? To some degree they do, but you know that the movement that you're going to make, the choices that you make, you know deep within that they are your own choices. And even if they weren't, there's no way to differentiate the two, right? There's no way we could know whether a chemical process in our brain and all of the effects and all the equation that led us up to this point and that formed who we are in this very moment, there's no way we could know whether that is going to cause us to say the next words that we're going to say out of our mouth, or if we chose those words by some outside force. Now, I like to think, okay, like a model that works for me is to think that there is the body and there is a physiological processes and the cause and effect, the world, as you could say, the real world, and that there is yet another realm, another existence, another dimension, however you want to call it, outside of that, and that we in these bodies, maybe even the soul could be part of that if you believe that there's a soul. Maybe there doesn't have to be in this model, okay? But outside of that, beyond the idea of a soul, is something else, is another consciousness that we belong to. This entity here in this real world is an avatar. That's the way I view it. And when you view it that way, you escape the problem of the cause and effect. Okay, and again, this is a model. Okay, this is just a way that I view it to make sense of this. It's for something that you can't make sense of. Like I talked about the quantum, that's why I talked about that, is because there's so many things that are beyond our possible. But if you actually create another layer of abstraction above it, and you have the real world, and you have another world sitting outside of the real world, okay, you could call it a simulation. There's a lot of ways to view this, okay. Actually, a really good book. I interviewed the author of, it's called My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything. And you can check out my interview with the author and also the reviews on that. It's a crazy book, but really good. The whole cause and effect thing doesn't matter anymore, right? Because if there's another process, another brain, another consciousness that's outside of the world that is manipulating that avatar, okay, then yes, the avatar has certain attributes. Yes, the avatar has its own memory. Yes, the avatar has its own experiences and feelings and its own chemical processes that are happening in its brain. But there's something else that's giving it some input, that's feeding it and driving it. There's something that's choosing A or B, right? It's not a random sequence, right? Because in our brains, everything, it can kind of come down to binary, zeros or ones, right? A or B, it's choices, right? Everything in life, all code, all algorithms come down to a simple choice of A or B, 0 or 1. Something has to make that choice, on or off. It's either randomness, right? Or there's something else. And I believe there's something else, okay? And when you view it from that viewpoint, again, it could be a simulation. you see that we do have free will. But again, even from that viewpoint, you can still view that everyone else does not have free will, because you don't have direct control over their avatars, and those avatars themselves don't have direct control. And you don't know if you're the only puppet master and everyone else is puppets. You can't know that. You can only know that you can take your actions, you can make your thoughts, that when you conceive a thing, you can make it a reality within your own life. But you can't know that experience for anyone else. And so that's how we should live. That's how we should view this. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, right? It's a good thing that other people, we can view them as automatons, that we can view them as not having free will. It's a good thing that we can exercise our own free will. It's a demonstrable fact, right? Again, some people will argue the semantics of it, but I can say I want to pick up this pen, and I can pick up this pen, and I can move those fingers, and I can speak the words that I want to say. Now, how much more free could your will be than that? You could say, well, that's not free will, because the chemical process, just like Sam Harris said, it's happened in your brain. It's your environment. All of these things, you didn't have any control over it. You didn't make yourself, okay? You didn't make your environment. All of these things happen to you as a sequence of events in some random chance. And I could say, yes, I agree with you, but regardless, I feel that I can do what I want. And so what other kind of existence could exist, right? Follow me here. What other way could I exist that would give me more free will, right? If you want to say that I don't have free will, you then have to say, well, what would free will actually look like? And the only picture I could ever draw for you of what free will would actually look like would be that one model that I just showed you. It would be if we are in a box, in a virtual machine, okay, in a hologram, in a simulation, whatever you want to call it, in some reality, and there's a greater reality outside of it in which this entire reality is encompassed, and that this is an avatar, just like a sim in a game, and that other consciousness is able to control this one. That would give free will to this one, if that makes sense. Now you have a problem of a nesting effect of, if that consciousness is the result of its actions and cause and effect and such, then how can it have free will? Well, there must be another reality and another avatar, and so on and so forth, ad infinitum, to infinity. That's where I kind of fall on this, right? And again, like I can't find any way that someone can argue, if you can't tell me what is more free will than what I have or you have. Okay, I'm going to say I have, because I don't believe you have free will. I only believe I do, right? Okay, if you can tell me what a bigger, more free will would look like, then sure, then you've got an argument. But if you can't tell me what actual free will would look like, or what would be more free will, if I have some kind of spectrum of free will, then I will have to tell you that I have it or it doesn't exist. It's the only two logical conclusions. Either I have it, or the whole question is void, because it doesn't exist, because it's a non-question, because that's not how things work, because there's no possible concept, no possibility of free will, which, if we can conceive it, we know that it is possible. So that's where I stand on the issue, and I welcome your input. This has been Philosopher John. If you haven't already, take my Bulldog Mindset quiz and see where you are on the Stoic spectrum. See how far you are. So, take it. Go ahead. Or don't. It doesn't matter, because you don't have a choice. All right, guys. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.